But then a couple years later, when the Tea Party got big, Michelle Bachmann signed a letter from the Faith and Family Values Group, one of the hardcore right wing groups, that said the exact same thing. This is like in 2012. And I'm just like, dude, you went in the wrong direction. You had it right the first time. When someone says something crazy like that, you should say, no, that's crazy. Not, well, let's polish it up and make it look a little bit more official and big corporate
Yeah.
and say the same garbage. And it was the whole, well, black people, at least their families were intact when they were slaves. That's really racist.
I mean,
You can't.
yeah, that's like saying, well, the Jews in the concentration camp, at least they were fed, you know?
That's exactly what it is, and
Yeah.
it's like it's crazy to say that.
There's
But it
only,
went from
go ahead.
it went from the people, the nuts on the lawn, to the people running for president.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's when I was like, wow, no, this is not good.
Yeah. I remember that Mark Williams guy. He said a bunch of crazy stuff about Obama too, if I remember right.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Like he was an
yeah.
Indonesian Muslim or some silliness like
Right,
that.
right. And he had something about he had some monkey thing. I don't know, but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And he was a creep.
I'm never a fan on saying things that truly hurt people,
Right,
except for, let me rephrase that. I never agree with saying something where you purposely try to hurt somebody. Sometimes people misspeak all the
right,
time. And when you're trying to be a comedian and trying to make a joke, okay? Because
right.
I think we've gotten far too serious and politically correct with all
Absolutely.
this nonsense. But to just flat out be hateful and say horrible things about people, I'm done with you. And that's part of what I hear on right wing radio. If you don't
Yeah,
agree with me, if you don't think the election was stolen, if you don't think that all the Muslims need to be thrown out of the country, if you don't believe that they're going to take away your guns, then you're not an American, you're not a patriot, and it's just ridiculous to even think that way. But that's what you hear on the radio now.
yeah. And again, I really noticed it when I the first time I noticed there was a problem. Like, well, I won't say the first time, but it was two things. So when ACA got passed, I noticed that the mood get changed. Um, when the ACA got passed, when they did that little weird thing with the slaughter rule, I remember Dana Lesh posted something saying liberty is dead, and then I know that was when I saw local talk radio and national radio. The mood changed. It was if you're a Democrat, you're a piece of crap, no
Yeah.
matter what.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that because they weren't exactly saying that up until that point, because part of the idea was, well, we'll embrace Democrats who have our values, and what happened was they try to pretend like Bart Stupak. They were like, oh, he's a conservative because he was pro-life, and he goes, oh, the conservatives we can't trust. Bart Stupak was not a conservative. Bart Stupak was an economic liberal who was pro-life, but they couldn't conceive of that. To them, you were either one thing or the other. You couldn't have values that were divergent from theirs. You had to either be all on the right or all on the left. So when those six people agreed to vote for the ACA, it was like, well, no Democrats, not even conservative Democrats, are okay. And that's when it got weird because then it became very, very tribal. And I was like, well, that's not the reality. I mean, there've always been Democrats who worked with Reagan, who worked with Eisenhower, or what have you. Um, and then when SB 1070, they were supporting that. They were sounding really anti-Latino.
What was SB 1070?
SB 1070 was the thing in Arizona. It was the Arizona immigration law
Mm.
that basically said that if the police suspect that you're an illegal immigrant, they can ask you to prove that you're a citizen,
Mm-hmm.
which was, had a lot of problems, and the guy eventually got struck down. Um, but it was, and they were promoting it, and interestingly is, I read the bill, and the bill wasn't that. I mean, it was the problem with the bill was redundant. It was basically, yeah, if you commit a crime, the police can send your information to immigration. But they were trying to say that the police were going to look at you and say, "Well, I think you're an illegal immigrant. Show me your papers." Which the police can't do that. I mean, they don't have the training to do that. You don't. That's that's not their job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you
Mm-hmm.
do something wrong, you break into a house or whatever, or you drive too fast, and they were conflating. And I was like, no, that's not. Look, I don't have a problem with them sending your information to immigration, and once you're in trouble, but they were asking the police to look for illegal immigrants, and I'm like, that's not a good idea, man. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Right.
It's a
Sure.
bad idea, and they're promoting this. I'm thinking, you guys just said you want less government, but now you want the police to become immigration and ICE agents. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just, from that point on, it became very, very ethnic oriented. Like America and a certain kind of ethnic attitude became infused in local talk radio as well as national talk radio. And that's when I just started not really wanting to be involved anymore as
What?
far as listening.
Right. And once upon a time in the days of KMOX, they had the fairness doctrine. Okay. Where
Yes.
you had to have a point and a counterpoint. Okay. You couldn't have right wing radio. When the fairness doctrine was struck, you could have on whatever you wanted to have on. Okay.
But
And I like that. Okay. However,
yeah, I don't support the fairness doctrine at all.
no, but the one thing the fairness doctrine did, and I do not support bringing it back. They tried to bring it back in, like, I want to say 2019, sometime like that. But the one thing the fairness doctrine did do is it gave you both sides. You can't listen
Yes.
to any radio station nowadays and get both sides. And the reason is because you they know their audience. They're never going to have a liberal guy on than a conservative guy on, because those stations don't get audiences and they don't make money. I mean, Fox has Juan Williams, okay, and a
Right,
couple
right.
other guys or gals. MSNBC used to have Pat Buchanan, and they may have a conservative person on there now. I don't know.
No, 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 not
They
anymore.
have none anymore.
No,
Yeah, but
at all.
but that they then they try to say they're fair and balanced. Both of them do, but they're just not, because they're playing
Not
to
even
they're
close.
playing to their crowd. Okay. And I was very fortunate when I was on that little country station, KLPW. They let me do whatever I wanted, and I had people call me everything from a Nazi to a communist. Just depends on which
Yeah,
stand that I took.
I get to see it. I get that too.
Uh huh. Yeah, they call you everything from a liberal to a conservative and everything in between,
Yep.
because shockingly you've got a brain where you can think left on one thing, right on one, and somewhere in the center
Right.
on the other. And radio's not like that. And I don't think I'm not going to say it would be better if it was. I certainly am not going to say it was better if they restore the fairness doctrine. But
No,
what I will say is that you need to have a little bit of responsibility before you open your mouth. And
that's true.
and you've been on this show lots of times, and
Right.
you know that the only rule I have is you can't slander anybody. It's the only
Right.
rule I have. You can say whatever else you want, but it better be true. If you were to start off with the uh, saying that an airplane didn't run into the Pentagon, but a cruise missile actually hit the Pentagon,
Right.
I'd jump all over you, because that's baloney.
Right. But the weird thing about it is, I think the problem is that I think the internet, social media, has changed radio, because
Oh,
social media
definitely.
it creates a sense of community that isn't there. And interestingly, the problem that talk radio has on the right, it has affected the left. Like the left is just as bad now, but in a different way. Like like the South City, like one of the reasons why I moved out of South City, and I have friends in South City, but overall, it's like the mentality here with a lot of the people that I knew or whatever, is it's very similar. It's very much like but they don't necessarily use talk radio. They'll use Facebook, they use their community groups, and they use their little committees they have where people get put on lists or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same, but it's the same mentality. It's if you're going to be part of this community, you have to have this position.
Yeah.
There was, like, for instance, there was one guy, and like these people, I just don't deal with them anymore because I'm not worried about. I don't really care. If you want to be my friend, you can be my friend. I'm not gonna change my views so that people aren't quote mad at me because I don't need that. But there was a guy who, with the shows that we do, and we have like different operations and different um we have different programs that we do.
Your
One of
music,
the guys
you talking about your music shows?
music and
Mm-hmm.
shows and security and
Mm-hmm.
performing arts and all that. So there's like photographers who they they're a big part of the community because that's how everyone gets their promote. You know, they're the professional photographers, and you need them. You gotta have them. And well, one of the photographers, I guess, at one point on his own page questioned whether transgender women were the same as women who were born women. That's all he did.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys goes, "I'm right now posting this to say this person needs to be kicked out of our community because he doesn't believe that trans women are the same as regular women." I'm just like,
Not what he said.
it's not what he said. But even if he did think that, why are you asking people to expel him? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like they have views, and you're expected to have those. It's the same thing as the right wing talk radio. If you don't have those views, you can't be part of. And honestly, and I'll say this: right wing radio is worse than left wing radio now, just because it's bigger and it still has a bigger foothold.
Mm-hmm.
But locally, like the people I know who believe those things, like I've met people who listen to the Radio Free Almond Network, and they're pretty mellow. They're mellow
Mm-hmm.
people. Whereas these people on the left, the other side of it is they don't have talk radio, but they get pissed if you don't agree with them.
Yeah.
I mean, they get, because they're not used to it. Whereas the people who listen to conservative radio are used to everyone around them disagreeing with them. These people here expect no one around them to have anything other than these left-wing views.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because it's always been my observation that if you're talking about a left-wing person and a right-wing person, the best attribute of the right-wing person was they were the adult in the room. The best attribute of the left-wing person was, you're the peace, love, and understanding guy.
Right.
And neither apply to neither group anymore. And and those were your best qualities, and you've kicked them out the door.
I don't think the left. I don't think we have a liberal movement or a conservative movement publicly anymore, because the liberals aren't liberal either. They're like, well, we don't like billionaires, but if you make and Big Pharma are so terrible. But now these guys are the biggest fans of Big Pharma I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so it's like neither side. They're so obsessed with each other that they build their positions on being the opposite of the other side. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's not like, well, I have this core position like we were talking about. We both think Trump is lunatics, but there's certain things that Trump said and did that I'm like, I agree with him on.
Absolutely.
Can't say that down here. Absolutely not. They will not. You'll be, someone's like, someone posted, you've changed. You're a right-wing person now. You used to be reasonable. Because someone made a claim about Donald Trump, and I said, that's not true. They said that Donald Trump killed 600,000 people with COVID. And I'm like, that's just not true. It's not true. He honestly didn't kill anyone. He didn't kill anybody. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't do this and he didn't do that. Well, who knows if that will work or not, but that's not killing somebody.
Exactly. Well, let me ask you one last question. We've talked about talk radio and where it's going. What has to happen in your opinion, to save talk radio? Because it's